It's a beautiful morning in October in Grenoble, France, and you can see that autumn is beginning to work its way down the mountain to Grenoble with fall colors. Anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about how it was bringing Spikey to France and some of the particulars that you have to go through to bring your dog or other pet to France. We'll talk about choosing a crate, choosing an airline, getting the proper documentation you need. And while I said your dog, I really should say our dog, because I don't pretend to speak with any expertise. I'm just relating our experience. We'll also talk a little bit about what we did to get Spikey physically and psychologically prepared for the trip. He's a Malinois, which are a particularly high-strung breed. For Spikey, we even purchased a $1,000 steel and aluminum crate, which was probably unnecessary because he had broken out of his plastic crate on several occasions. But he's not an escape artist, he's a go-to artist. In other words, he'll break down any barrier to get to my sons if he hears them nearby. He wants to be part of whatever they're doing, and he will and has gone through incredible barriers to do that, including chewing the door frame, the door out of its door frame and opening a door that way. So, anyway, we think I don't think he would have tried to escape from the plastic crate when it was being transported. As you can see, autumn, in terms of changing leaves, hasn't really reached Grenoble yet. It's mid-October. It doesn't really happen here until about the end of October. We're going this way. Come on. So a couple of the first things we did was make sure that he could handle a crate for an extended period of time, and also that he was muzzle trained. Crate trained, he was already crate trained from a puppy, and at various times we put him in the crate when guests were over, so that was not a problem. But he had to get muzzle trained, and because anytime we want to minimize his time in the crate, so we'd be walking him in the airport where they typically require muzzles, and also because we were going to take public transportation in France. In France, you are allowed to bring your dog on public transportation, on the trains, buses, whatever, but your dog is required to have a muzzle. Now, we see many French seem to ignore that rule, but that is the rule, so we didn't want to take any chances with that. So we started taking him a couple of months in advance on walks with the muzzle, and he never actually liked it, but he got to the point where at least he wasn't trying to take it off with his paws. We did have kind of an interesting situation with the crate. He had chewed his way out of his plastic crate a few times, pretty much destroyed it. He's not an escape artist exactly. He's more of a go-to artist, and whenever he heard our boys playing nearby, whatever barrier existed between him and the boys was pretty much destroyed. So, and the boys would when they had kids over, swimming in the pool, so forth. Spikey plays pretty rough, and so we'd have to put him in the crate, because otherwise we'd have to return the boys' friends to their parents with scratches, scratch marks all over them. So anyway, yeah, so we were kind of worried about him being in a plastic crate, although it probably in retrospect would have been fine, because he wouldn't be trying to get to the boys, and with all the strangers around going through the airport luggage. I think he would have viewed it more as a retreat. But anyway, retreat's probably not the right word, a shelter. Anyway, so to be safe though, we ended up buying this very expensive metal crate for about $1,000, and I'll show you a picture of it here. It's kind of a specialty crate for breeds like Malinois. It's a forever crate. It's pretty nifty in that it collapses into like a big suitcase, self-contained kind of suitcase. It is pretty heavy, and I do wish that they'd come up with a better attachable wheel solution. Anyway, but otherwise it's pretty sturdy. It does make a lot of noise. I'm sure it's like a drum inside when you move it around and it bangs. It's pretty noisy, I think, for your pet. It's airline approved, which is very important because not all crates are. Wow, look at the fall color starting to come into play. That is really beautiful. That's the Bastille. That's the Isère River. So being airline approved involves a couple of things. First of all, it's got to be big enough for your pet. So you check into the measurements for that. And second of all, it's got to be IATA, I believe is how the acronym is pronounced. IATA. I think it's International Airline Travel Association or something like that. Approved. And that involves both the model and the make. And of course the crate that we got for him did satisfy the airline requirements. And when we got to the airport, the guy at the counter actually literally did check out to make sure that it was both the right size and the right make. If I sound a little winded, I apologize. I just finished running. So in sum, get your crate and muzzle situation worked out early. The other thing you got to work out early is the airline reservation. Don't assume that you can just book an airline reservation for you and the family or your loved one and then show up with your dog. A lot of airlines won't even take a dog on certain flights, and you need to clear that early. Most of the airlines have an extra charge for a dog. We ended up on Air France because they seem to be kind of the most what do I want to say? I don't know, the most accepting, gave us the most assurance that they would take the dog. But again, we had to book them early. We had to get approved for that early. If your dog is a small enough breed, you might be able to bring them on board with you in the passenger seating. Certain types of dogs, they won't accept at all. Usually it's the ones with the smushed snouts, for lack of a better word. The kind of bulldogish looking breeds, like I don't know, boxers. I don't know if they take boxers or not, but check into that. As we were flying from LAX to France, it was going to be a minimum of an 11-hour flight. So we made the decision to make it a direct flight and then take a train from Paris to our ultimate destination in Grenoble, because there were no direct flights from LAX to Lyon, which is the closest big airport to Grenoble, and we just didn't feel comfortable having our dogs, be in that crate for 15, 16 hours. And also just the possibilities of things going wrong with a layover somewhere. And as I mentioned, you can take your dog on the trains in France, but the requirement is that he, of course, be on a leash and that he be muzzled. Be thinking also about how you're going to outfit the interior of the crate. We had one of those sort of drip water bottles, as well as a tray type water a container, and what we did was we froze that water before our trip in the hopes that it would sort of melt slowly through the trip. In reality, it probably melts in the first hour or so, but so that's what we did. Had a sort of a couple of water systems for him. You want to get him used to, if you get one of those spout bottles, and I would recommend you would do, you want to get him used to drinking from that before the trip, so he knows how to do that. There are also various ways that you can line the bottom of the crate in case he needs to urinate or defecate. There's some different commercial solutions being sold, as well as simply the absorbent mats that you can put at the bottom. Spikey, our dog, turned out to be quite the trooper and neither urinated or pooped for the whole 12 hours. Now, we took him on a little bathroom break in a parking lot area of the airport just before putting him in the crate, and then did a similar thing right after we picked him up at the Paris airport. Some airports reportedly have little areas for you to take your pet to go to the bathroom. We did not find that either in LAX or Paris. Maybe they exist, but we didn't find them. So we took him to like like I said, I can't remember if it's LAX or Paris. We took him to a little area for parking, and found a little spot for him to go to the bathroom there. Of course, we poop bagged it and threw it away, as responsible people should. Anyway, going back to the flight plan for a moment, certain airports obviously are major hubs. LAX is. Let me see. Munich is. Frankfurt is even more. Paris is. London Heathrow are. So you might definitely consider booking a direct flight, and one that takes you a little bit further from your ultimate destination, and then using ground transportation to end up at that ultimate destination. Anyway, that's a choice we made. Malinois are very nervous breeds, and we believe the trip, even though he's very well behaved and did quite well on it, we do believe that it was very stressful for him. And since he's been in Grenoble, he is quite fearful of crowds and crowded situations, and we think that maybe the trip had something to do with that. Also, he had a 4th of July incident when he was a pup that I'm not sure he ever recovered from. We were at ground zero from the rocket launching, and he completely panicked and slipped his collar, and we chased him, and it was quite an ordeal. But I digress. Another big item on the checklist is getting your dog approved for entry into the destination country. For us, we had to get a EU pet passport, and
it involved, it was actually quite surprisingly complicated and not streamlined because and my wife will talk about this a little bit more in a moment, but basically you have to get, obviously your dog has to have all his shots or her shots, and then you have to have your dog certified by a USDA accredited veterinarian, and then you have to take that paperwork to a USD AVIS, AVIS, I'm not sure what that stands for, center to have it, to get you the rest of your paperwork. So, and then it has to be done within a certain time period before the flight. So for us, that involved getting our dog vet certified in San Diego just a few days before the flight, then taking that up the 2.5 hours up to LA to the USD Avis Center there to get our paperwork. So it was surprisingly surprisingly not user friendly, not a user friendly process. Anyway, here's my wife to talk a little more on it. Like our orchids? Anyway, since you handled the pet passport for Spikey, could you talk a little bit about what you went through? And I guess you could start with when it was. Was it 2020? Summer of 2020, is that correct?
Yes, the summer of 2020. So I started out talking to our veterinarian, and they said, basically go to the USDA APHIS, APHIS website.
And by the way, let me interrupt for a second. I did look up that acronym, and it stands for Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service. So I guess it's a division of the USDA, and they have a website with a subpage called Pet Travel, and in that there's a little field that has a drop-down menu where you can pick your country. And for example, France is in there, and then they give some of the specific requirements for that country. Anyway, continue.
So, you would, for us being in California, we're lucky we have one located, I can't remember where, somewhere in Los Angeles. So, essentially, after going to the website, I think typing in the country that you're trying to transport your pet to, it will give you what their country or that country's requirements are, and then you get that information and you work with your veterinarian, and there's a timetable as well. You have to do certain tests, get certain shots and things like that, literally within a certain period of time right before you hop on the plane. I mean, it gets pretty complicated. So I was at the time staying in Los Angeles, but our veterinarian was way back in San Diego, so I had to literally make these appointments, drive the dog all the way down there to get all this paperwork filled out. So there's this thing called the pet checklist. So live warm-blooded animal checklist for pets traveling as checked baggage and air cargo. So you're filling out all this. The pet checklist, which has, you have to, with your veterinarian, do this export health certificate, rabies vaccination. I mean, it just goes on and on and on.
Since you were flashing that towards the camera, let's do a little slower kind of scan of what that is, and then that was the checklist, and the other thing
Well,
you
this
showed
has
me.
my personal information.
Okay, yeah,
I'm
that.
gonna show you
Ooh,
this
did
one.
we have to do that with that one?
No.
Okay, cool.
So on this part of this checklist,
Yeah.
it literally asks for the dimensions of the pet crate, and then I think you have to add that to how heavy the pet crate is, added to the how heavy your pet is, all this stuff. Gosh, like I said, it was just tons of paperwork that had to be filled out, and like the microchip paperwork.
Now, is that
so-
paperwork you filled out, or did the veterinarian
The
fill that out?
veterinarian, like I filled out what parts I could, and then the veterinarian is supposed to take over and fill out.
And I
all the
remember
rest.
there was a little thing where we were a little bit freaked out because the website said it had to be a USDA certified veterinarian, and at first we weren't sure, if I recall, that whether ours was
And
that.
luckily ours was. So that's a caveat as well. They have to be a specific type of veterinarian. Yeah, that's one thing, because some of them aren't USDA approved or what have you. So I had to do that, and I was back and forth with, like I said, the USDA asking tons of questions. And what they'll send back to you is, for your convenience, USDA has implemented a new procedure, which is temporary, so they're only literally you're dropping off your packet, and with all this information that you've filled out with your veterinarian, and the drop-off is between 8 and 10, and you pick it up the same day between 2 and 3. So
And then all had to be done, if I recall, like within a week of flying,
a week of flying, yeah, or something insane.
Or I don't know. Was it as short as 48 hours? I don't think.
No, I don't think it was that close. It was, it might have been 3 days.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
I just remember, holding my breath the whole time. It was insane. So you get back.
And then there was the thing with your veterinarian sending up the wrong pet's
So this
information.
microchip certificate.
Yeah.
So I was going, like I said, there's so much paperwork. I was going through the paperwork, getting ready to make this trek up to LA to the USDA office or facility, and I look, and it's some other pet's information on my microchip certificate. I'm like, what the? I'm not driving 3 hours back to San Diego to get the correct one.
Oh, I thought you discovered it when you were in LA.
No.
Okay, yeah.
It was right before, so I phoned them up and I'm like, oh my God, you guys gave me some other pet information. And so I think she emailed it to me.
Yeah.
And then she allowed me to literally forward her name, like gave me permission to put the piece of paper
Okay,
over
veterinarian will not be named.
Yes, we won't name the veterinarian. Did you show her with this first thing?
Probably not.
Okay.
Okay, so hey, the other thing I had is when I went to the APHIS website, there was this thing about, your phone's going off. There was this thing about a link where veterinarians could upload the documents electronically, and it wasn't clear to me whether that was a new procedure that didn't exist when we did it, so that allowed, that sort of obviated or made unnecessary this whole shuttling back and forth between the USDA APHIS office and the veterinarian, or whether it allowed the veterinarian to upload the information, but then you still had to get the documents, then pick them up from the USDA APHIS office.
Yeah, that didn't seem to be the nice, wonderful choice.
Because I did notice that's on the website now.
Yeah,
So
okay.
it may be, in the year since we've done it, it may be a little less traumatic.
So you literally get this model health certificate for the non-commercial movement into a member state from a territory or third country of dogs, cats, or ferrets in accordance with Article 5.1, and it just goes on and on. So you get this thick, like,
Yeah.
stamped, like the raised stamp impression thing. And this is the packet that you'll get from the USDA. So you take all this stuff with your pet checklist, boom, 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 and show up to the airport many hours before your trip, and you hand them this, and I kid you not, they barely look at it, and they just take your dog, and that's it. And you're thinking,
Excellent.
wow, I went through
Yeah.
2 weeks
Yeah.
of hell preparing this paperwork,
Yeah.
and you guys aren't even looking at it. So
Well, thank you so much, Sam,
You are
both
very
for
welcome.
handling that.
I don't want to have her have to do it again.
the process as well as sharing it again on video.